Hello and welcome to Philosophy 101, Introduction to Philosophy. My name is Nate Greeley. I'll be a professor for this course. This lecture is should be relatively short. It's just to introduce you to the structure of the class, to go over the syllabus, and what you can expect to do in this course. So again, my name is Nate Greeley. I got my PhD in philosophy and cognitive science from UCSD. I have a master's from Cal State LA in philosophy. I did my BA at USC. I teach here at Compton College. I've taught at uh, Mount St. Mary's. I've taught at UCSD, Cal State LA, Cal Lutheran, uh, several more schools. Uh, I love teaching Philosophy 101. I love teaching at Compton, so I look forward to this course. If you need to reach me for any reason, you can always message me on Canvas, or that's my email right there, ngreeley@compton.edu. If you need to Zoom with me at any time to sort of chat about some issue in the class or some subject, happy to do that as well. Those will just be by appointment. So just shoot me an email or a message on Canvas and say I'd love to, Zoom with you, and we'll figure out a time. So many of you have probably never taken a philosophy course, and you're kind of wondering what it is. So the way I explain it is, once upon a time in ancient Greece, when they first started having universities, there was only one subject, and it was philosophy, and everybody learned it, and it covered everything. It covered what we now call physics and biology and law and everything. Uh, and what happened over the thousands of years since then is philosophers started to get some really good concrete answers to some of the questions we're asking, like, about the nature of life. And when we do that, um, it would spin off and become its own department, biology. Once we started to get some answers about how, objects move and the forces of the universe, that spun off into its own subject and became physics, right? So all the different departments that you'll see in a university used to be in the philosophy department. So over thousands of years, what the philosophy department is left with is all the hardest problems that we couldn't answer. So um, philosophy now looks like we're just trying to answer the most fundamental, most difficult questions about the world. Uh, in this course, I'm going to survey some of those. I can't cover everything, of course, right? But we'll start with the subject of knowledge. What does it mean to know something? That's a good thing to know if you're starting on a college career. Presumably, you're trying to gain knowledge. Well, how do you know when you've got it? Um, Philosophers try to answer that question, so we'll discuss that a bit. Um, what should we do both practically and morally if I have certain goals, if I want to make a lot of money, or if I want to make friends, or if I want to uh, get a job as a lawyer. uh, in a practical sense, you would like to know what's the best, what decisions should I make to get me there. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover practical reasoning. Philosophers and psychologists have come up with some rigorous theories of practical reasoning that can help you to get whatever your goals are. um, but there's also the broader question of what should I do more generally in what we'll call a moral sense, right? What is the right thing to do? What should I be doing with my life? What is the most basic nature of right and wrong? We're going to talk about that a bit as well. We're going to discuss questions about the mind. So this is one of the very difficult, thorny questions. This is my area of specialization. Um, cognitive scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists are all linguists are all still working on this problem. It's a very difficult problem. The mind is kind of special uh, because uh, it's subjective, right? Nothing else in the world is subjective like that. If I want to study uh, atoms, right, or if I want to study DNA, uh, anybody can look at the same uh, data, right, and we'll all, by and large, agree. But the mind is different. I have special access to my own mind, and you have special access to your mind, and we can't see inside each other's minds. And that's a novel thing. It's a unique thing in the universe, and it makes studying the mind very difficult, right? So we'll talk a bit about the nature of the mind. Um, we'll do some metaphysics, which is uh, we're just going to focus. There's lots of questions you might ask in metaphysics. Does God exist? What kind of thing is God? Do we have free will? I'm going to focus on personal identity, right? So the question of what makes me the same person now that I was when I was a baby, right? I don't have any of the same cells in my body, or all my molecules have been swapped out. Um, you know, I don't remember anything from when I was a baby. How is that me? In what sense is that me? And there's various theories for trying to answer that question of what makes you you over time, even through all these changes. And we'll cover some other questions as well, philosophy of science. Um, so I'm approaching this from an analytic philosophy perspective. There's kind of two types of philosophy. In Europe, they do something called continental philosophy. The methodology is a little bit different. Here, in the United States and in England and Australia, we do analytic philosophy, and uh, it's a little more. I like to think. I mean, I prefer it, right? I think it's a little more rigorous, a little more based on strict arguments. A continental philosopher might disagree with me there. Um, but so the areas we're going to cover are epistemology, metaphysics, philosophy of mind, reasoning, philosophy of science, and ethics. So each of those will be a roughly 2 week unit, and you don't need any previous knowledge of philosophy. You don't need to have taken logic. I will introduce you to a little logic here and there throughout the course. Um, and I'm curious to see what sort of background you have, if you can bring any of your knowledge to the course. I love when that happens as well. So learning outcomes, this is something that's kind of required on every syllabus, and there's a certain verbiage, right, that comes from the course. Uh, so you can read that on the syllabus. Um, my personal outcome I'd like to see from this is not so much to cram a whole bunch of content in your brain and memorize it, right? I don't think that's very effective. You know, I was an undergrad once, and I remember maybe a couple things from my undergrad education, but they were things that I sort of did a deep dive on myself that I found interesting and I studied more deeply. And that's what I want for this course. I'm going to give you sort of a a broad array of options of things, and you do have to, do the readings. There will be assessments to make sure that you're keeping up and are actually engaging with the material. But I'm hoping you'll find one subject that's really interesting to you that you're going to do a deep dive and write a term paper on. So my goal, my learning outcome for you is to at least find one subject that you become a master of. So the assessments in this course, the way I do it is I give you lots of encouragement and lots of points early on to stay engaged. So there will be discussions, right, that are graded, and as long as you uh, post a discussion in a way that shows that you're engaging with the material. Now, I'll say more about it in a second, but what I like to see out of the discussions is not so much summarizing and proving that you read the reading for that week or whatever. I want you to say something original, right? Question the reading, come up with an objection, come up with a way to extend it. Just if you didn't understand a part of the reading, just ask a question about it. That's the sort of stuff I'd like to see happen in the discussion. And so you'll get points for that. You get points for some reading responses that, again, so long as they show engagement and like knowledge and understanding of some part of the readings, you'll be fine. You'll get those points. Um, the essay that you'll write uh, occurs in stages um, because I think most courses teach people to write bad essays quickly, and I want you to write a little bit better of an essay, which means we're going to go slowly, bit by bit, with lots of revision. You're not really writing until you're revising, right? You've already got something on the page and you're making it better. That's when things start to get good. So you've got several early stages, and the early stages of the essay, again, so long as you complete them and it looks like an honest attempt, right, to present an original argument, you'll get the full points for that. So about 60% of your grade, you get the points so long as you show up and do the stuff and I can tell you're trying, right? Now I can tell if you're not trying very hard and that you don't get full points, right? So it's relatively easy to do well in this class if you stick with it and do all the work. And then, of course, some of the assessments, like the midterm exam, the final exam, and the final draft of your essay, those will be graded on how good they are and on the quality. Um, but it's a mix of both. But yeah, people do well as long as they stick with it and do the work. So I mentioned the discussion. So every week, except for like spring break and stuff like that, you'll have a discussion post due, and I want you to try to do something original, right? Say again, you read a reading by Hume and you say, I didn't understand this part that he said. The goal with the discussion is to start coming up with ideas for your essay, because your essay, you need to do something original. You're going to do philosophy in this class, which means coming up with your own argument, right? That isn't taken from the readings. And a good way to do that is in this discussion. Um, when you're doing a reading and you don't understand something, often that means that there's actually maybe a problem there that you're sort of like uh, kind of picking up on that could actually turn into a really good paper, right? Where you say, actually, this thing that Hume says doesn't really make sense, and that's because he's wrong about it. If you come up with an objection, you think, this thing, I don't agree with the thing that this philosopher said, do that. You're not required to agree with anything in this class. That's the nice thing about philosophy. Everyone can, as opposed to a biology class, you couldn't come in and say, actually, DNA doesn't exist, right? But in this philosophy class, you can say knowledge doesn't exist, and as long as you can come up with reasons for it, you can write that paper, right? So the discussion, it's just, they don't have to be long, right? They're short, but again, it's supposed to be original engagement with the readings, not just summary. And that'll be due every Friday before midnight. Um, instead of regular quizzes, we're going to have regular reading and reflections where you will write one-page essay focusing on one of the readings from the unit. You don't have to explain everything that we learned in that 2-week period. Again, I'd like you to pick something that's interesting to you and focus in. Again, it might be spark an idea for a paper. These can just be summarizing the material. That's fine with these reading reflections. Again, it's a check-in to make sure that you are keeping up, right? If you're reading reflection, if it's obvious that you just haven't read anything or watched any lectures and you're just kind of making stuff up, you won't get the points. But if you are engaged, and it's pretty obvious to me, I've been doing this a long time, then you will get the points. So there will be a midterm. The midterm will just be 2 short essays. I will give you the essay prompts ahead of time. You will have time to think through them, and then, a few days later, you'll just submit it to Canvas, a PDF with 2 essays. I'll give you several. I'll give you like 3 or 4 prompts to choose from, and you can pick the 2 that you think you can answer the best and write on those and submit those. Then after the midterm, I will post like some essay ideas, right? You can write on those essay ideas if you want. They're kind of open-ended, so you still have to find an original way to do that thing. But if you have trouble coming up with your own idea, for some folks that helps. But you are free to come up with any idea you want, as long as it has to do with something from this course. Come up with your own paper topic, right? Whatever interests you, wherever you think you can make an interesting argument. So this assignment, the research proposal, is just a relatively short, like 1 page, even less, document where you just sort of explain, here's my idea for a paper, here's here's my thesis that I'm going to argue for. I like to see a clear thesis, and here's my argument so far. Here's how I think I can support that thesis. It doesn't have to be totally worked out or totally convincing, um, but I want you to start coming up with your idea long before, the final essay is due. Then a bit later, you'll work up a draft. Now, this is not an outline. It's not half an essay. It should be a full essay, about 5 pages, um, where you make your argument. Now, a lot of that 5 pages is going to be summary of the material because you have to write as though the person that's reading it has never taken this class, knows nothing about it, right? Don't write as though you're writing for me. Write as though you're writing for your, I don't know, a parent or a roommate, someone who's intelligent enough to understand this stuff, but just doesn't know anything about it. So the first, I don't know, half of your essay is going to be, right, explaining all this stuff to the readers. So if you're writing a paper that objects to Locke's theory of personal identity over time, well, you'll write an introduction where you put your thesis and a little preview of your argument. Then you'll spend a couple good paragraphs just explaining what is personal identity over time, what is Locke's theory of it, right? And then somewhere on, page 3 or something, now you're getting into the part where you're making your original argument. And then if you still find yourself a little short, look, I'm not super hung up on it has to be the exact page count. I want you to make an original argument. But if it's feeling a little short and you've explained the whole topic, you've, you know, introduced your original argument, then what you should do is think about possible objections that someone might make to your argument and respond to them. You'll already have some because when you did your essay proposal, I will have, right, written up some notes that said, I like this idea, but you might want to think about this. Someone might, pose this problem for you. How would you deal with that? So if you ever need to pad, don't just start talking about other stuff. Um, Address objections to your argument, and so it should be relatively easy to get to roughly 5 pages. And again, if the draft looks like an honest attempt to make an argument, even though maybe it's not great yet, that's fine. You'll get the points. I only take off points if it's obvious that you haven't even tried. There's no argument in there. You're just sort of summarizing the readings or something, or it's only, 2 pages or it's just an outline, right? And then eventually the final version will be due, right? You'll get notes back on your draft from me, ways to improve it. Then you type it up. Now you're really writing, right? You're looking at your words, you're reading your sentences and saying, when you read it back, you're like, oh, that didn't make much sense, did it? Right? Let me clarify that part, right? Oh, as I'm reading my argument now, I can see there might be a problem there. Let me see if I can fix that, right? That's when you're really getting into something that could work. And by the time you're done with this essay, you might want to, I'll give you some resources. You might want to submit it to an undergraduate journal or an undergraduate conference, and that can go on your resume, right? If instead of just the class ends and the paper goes in the trash, you can use it for something if you've taken the time to make a good argument. And there'll be a final exam, exact same format as the midterm, just from the second half of the class. I'll give you 4 essay prompts. You choose the 2 that you think you can answer the best, and 2 short essays on those prompts. The prompts will be very detailed, and as long as you answer each, it's going to be very clear what you need to do to get all the points. So as long as you do those things, you'll do well. But make sure that you answer each part of the prompt. So that's all the assessments. On the Canvas, there's the day by day course schedule. I'm not going to go through that in detail. It would take too long. But I am going to skip to the end. So, some diversity inclusion. So yes, for sure, I want everyone to feel included and that their contributions are welcome in this class. So I've never encountered any problems with students, making other students feel bad. Everyone tends to be very respectful in discussion. Hopefully that will continue here, and I will certainly do my best to make sure that you feel comfortable. So, in philosophy, sometimes we cover controversial topics, right? So if my treatment of a topic ever feels wrong to you, let me know. I make mistakes, and I'm happy to apologize when I've done that. Or if it's a subject that's just difficult for you or emotional for you, let me know as well. And, we can come up with an alternative assignment or something like that. So just keep me in the loop, and I'm happy to do whatever I can do to make sure everyone feels welcome and included. If you require any kind of academic accommodations, now in an asynchronous course, a lot of that is taken care of. The assignments aren't timed or anything. So often, one of the accommodations people get is like extra time on exams, things like that. But if there is anything you think you might need, happy to try to accommodate you. But there is a process for that. So try to get that started early if you think this applies to you. Go to that link. It's also on the syllabus in the Canvas, and reach out and get through the red tape so that I can give you the help that you need. Likewise, religious accommodations, if you have religious holidays or any sort of conflicts with assignments, let me know. And I tend to be pretty accommodating. And finally, academic integrity. So the danger here, right, is that people are just sort of writing their essays by Googling stuff and either plagiarizing or using AI. AI is not very good at doing it for my course because remember the paper I'm asking you to write is an original paper, right? Um, that that is original argument. AI is terrible at original arguments. So I've gotten essays in that it's pretty clear to me was written by AI. And what they look like is they're grammatically perfect and totally devoid of original content, right? But the whole point of your essay proposal, your draft, and your essay is that they are original, right? And I'll see the progress. I know if it's you or not, right? So just don't do it. Uh, it's an ugly process. If I have to sort of report you for academic integrity, it's not pleasant for anybody. Honestly, it's harder to cheat well than it is to just do the do the work, right? So just do the work. Okay, well that is it. Well, I look forward to the next lecture. We'll be diving into the content. We'll actually start out the course with not with philosophy, but with some philosophical short fiction, right? That's a little more fun to read and gets your brain exercised in a philosophical direction. So I will see you then.